Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, and if you guys are new, welcome. My name is Chai T. It's been a while since I posted a video since the rework of Nature Staffs. I haven't really felt like adapting to it, so I've been playing on my other accounts so far. But since the launch of Queens, however, I wanted to start up a new video so that there's going to be a lot of influx of players and a lot more new content to play with and show off. In this video, I'm just going to go ahead and show off some elite dungeon gameplay that me and my guild tried out, and much like myself, many of the other players have not done it before, so it was definitely a learning experience, but also a lot of fun. I would recommend it to anyone to try to get into a guild and try to play around with it if they could, but I'm definitely not an expert at this game, so I'm just trying to have some fun with it. Without all that out of the way, let's get into it. Alright guys, I'm just going to get straight into it, but we ended up taking White Portal into the new Black Zone and headed our way to the Elite Dungeon. We bought a map for it, and which I think took 5 random dungeon maps or something like that, they were saying. I'm not too sure if that was cheaper or not, like anything like that, but we went ahead and found it and made our way to the dungeon. So you can see here I was actually using a melee DPS setup, which I don't personally recommend, and in the future I probably will not run melee DPSs anymore into these dungeons, but this is what I ran because that's the highest spec stuff that I had. So I used a carving sword for the resistance debuff on the mobs, and then the best DPS gear I could get, so the stalker's jacket for the extra DPS, and then the assassin's shoes so that I could dodge roll out of any incoming attacks from the mobs, as well as the knight helmet because a lot of these mobs in the dungeon have knockback effects, and then the Limhurst cape as well, just to get some mana in case I have any mana problems. The second group of mobs that we've encountered were a group of monks, and if you guys don't know, these monks don't do very much damage, but they do a lot of knockback and disrupts, rolling around everywhere, knocking everyone back. So this is where the knight helmets come in. Really helpful to just keep in one place. After that, we moved on to the next couple rooms, and this one was actually pretty tough. There's a group of Avalonian mages that were clumped up in this room along with an elite mob as well. So these were pretty tough for us as they clumped very easily. So we actually ended up clearing the mobs around it, which were just a couple of drones and suicide bombers, which these things we like to call them. But we ended up walking around them and bypassing the whole thing entirely. So we moved on, and ahead was the boss room. So it was surrounded by a couple of drones on either side of it, and then the Colossus right in the middle. So I've seen a couple of these Colossus around the Black Zone a couple times, but I've never actually done one of them, and most of these people here haven't either. So it was kind of a new experience for all of us, and this whole dungeon was pretty much a new experience for most of the people here. But we ended up doing it pretty successfully, and there was actually 2 purple chests in this room, which was kind of cool to see, just to see some extra loot. But what ended up happening, we just went ahead and started the fight, and there's a couple of different attacks that the Colossus does. One which is kind of a wide attack which knocks back all enemies, and then the second one is a targeting attack which only targets you if you move. So if you see a target on your head, make sure you don't move, press the S key, which makes you stand still, and then it will stop targeting you. For me, I didn't figure that out until a little bit later, and I was trying to run away from it and trying to dodge it, but I ended up figuring it out eventually, and most of my team did as well. So even though you might think that standing still you're just gonna suicide, it'll actually make it so that it doesn't target you. The next attack that it has is actually a straight beam attack, which is pretty easy to dodge, but if you do get hit by it, it may sleep you, which will be unfortunate because then it'll hit you with another one and does a pretty decent amount of damage. And we wouldn't recommend kiting this thing because when it does walk around, it actually makes boulders fall from the ceiling, and a lot of places around you will be scattered with like a bunch of AoE effects. So try to have 1 or 2 tanks to just stand still and switch off so that you guys don't have to move the boss around. Got about 25,000 fame from it, but we realized that we did need to go ahead and finish the mobs in the previous room, so it took a little while because we couldn't really figure out how to aggro just a couple of them. So we went ahead, tried to dive them, kill a little bit at a time, and then move on. So we went back to go to the chests, and unfortunately I didn't actually get any loot from the chests. So I tried to get a picture of the loot as best as I could, but unfortunately none of it was mine, which is kind of sad. I didn't think that was a thing, but I think it was because of our party size. It was a little bit too big, so maybe next time we can go ahead and get a smaller group and figure out how to get some even loot. Then this next part, there's actually this gate that you have to kill, and it's a little bit beefy, so it might take some time to attack. But what happened there was, once it's breached, there'll be a notification that says a gate has been breached, and this gate actually respawns while you're inside the dungeon, so that when other players come inside and try to dungeon dive you, they have to break the gate and then you'll be notified. So this is kind of a really cool mechanic because it does take really long to finish these dungeons, and if you're in here for a long time, it's going to be really easy for another team to just come in and try to smack you from behind, I guess. So I'm glad they put that in there. Well, we moved on, and the last part of this first floor was a couple more new mobs, and most of the time you just have to dodge their skill shots and move out of the way. Nothing too bad. You shouldn't end up dying as long as you are playing smart and DPSing and tanking the whole time. So after that we moved on to the second floor, and it was kind of weird because it was the exact, pretty much almost exact same setup as the first floor, which was a group of cluster of mages right in the front and center of a small room, and then a drawbridge or a bridge into the next room with the boss of a Colossus, which was alright. I mean, it was a little bit better for us because we've done it before and we saw it, but after a couple of times of doing this, it'll probably get old if it continues like this. So the Colossus is the exact same mechanics, which was kind of unfortunate for us because it made us a little bit more cocky as we've done it before. So we actually ended up almost dying to this. There was about 25,000 HP left, and one of our tanks died and most of our other DPSers died. So by the time it got down to about 10,000 life or 15,000 life, our second tank died, and it was just a bunch of DPSs running around the screen trying to dodge all of the skill shots that the Colossus had. So once we were up, this room only had one purple chest, and unfortunately, again, I did not get any loot from it. Some people got really lucky with some tier 8 gear, so there's definitely a chance for you guys to get some good stuff, but for me, that wasn't it. We moved on after that, same floor, floor 2, and this was a little bit different, so we moved on to some more mobs, and there was a priestess mob, which you guys should probably focus down first because it does do healing effects. And then we moved on to another one, which was a little bit of a different mob. I can't remember the name of this guy, but he doesn't do very many special things. He kind of just slams his hammer and sometimes jumps around a little bit, but nothing that anyone should have very much trouble with. So the last little group of mobs that we encountered was a couple of archers, which you guys have seen before, so well, most likely have seen before in the black zones. They are not very nice to melee DPSers, and they'll knock them back every time that you'll get close to them. So you could probably leave those to the ranged DPS, but again, moving forward, you probably don't want to have any melee DPSs in these dungeons. So the next and final mob was this last one, which I show actually has a pretty cool ability where it has swords protruding from its body and starts spinning, which does a lot of damage. So again, melee DPS would want to back off from this, and also tanks. And then once the swords stop, they shoot out from the sides of it and deal damage to anyone standing in its path. So obviously try to dodge this, try to walk away from it as much as possible. So finally we reached the boss, and there was a gold chest and a gold shrine, which I believe would have given us about, I heard, like a week buff or something for maybe PvE mobs. But what we ended up doing is, I'll show you guys our best attempt at it. We tried it out about 3 times, and this one seemed to work the best. So the first thing you guys need to know is that there's a debuff on our characters that progressively gets worse and worse. So you can see it in the top of your character screens, which looks like a little yellow light, and it will start stacking up starting at 0. And many of the DPSers would have to go and clear the stacks at around 3 stacks in order to not have to waste the healer's mana or the healer's time healing you. So the way you do that, and the way we did it, was we just ran to the sides away from the boss, and it cleared it after a couple seconds. Or for me, for some reason, every time I went to one of those shrines on the outside, it would clear it. I'm not sure if that was because of the shrine or because I was further enough away from the boss. But we had our tanks standing in near the wall, because as you can see, the cleave of this boss is actually very, very wide. So you do not want to be standing within the peripheral vision of this boss, like nowhere near anywhere I can see, because you will get hit from it because it's really wide. So the other abilities that it does is, it does the same thing as the one I showed you before. It spawns some spinning swords that'll deal some damage to you and shoot out when it is done spinning. For us, we decided to go and use 2 different tanks, and once the tank had a lot of stacks of the bleed on it, he would switch out with the other tank, which was pretty efficient and worked pretty well for us up until the halfway mark. And once that happens, the boss will start changing forms, and once it does, it'll have this gray little bubble around it, and you want to get out of that bubble because you do start taking damage. But once it does that, it'll actually regen all of its health, but it will start the second phase of the boss, which makes it so that the cleave is even bigger than it was before. So you don't even want to be like thinking about looking in front of this boss. You want to be at his butt. That's where you want to be. If anywhere, you just want to be at his butt, because even if you're on the sides of him, you're still going to get hit. So this is what happened to us. We ended up dying because our one of our tanks got too low, had to run away, and then they started focusing on the DPS, and as you could see, it just took a couple swings to knock all of us down. So that was pretty unfortunate. But I also wanted to show you guys one other ability that he does, which he channels and brings all of the people close to him just all in one sweep. So this is very unfortunate for a lot of the DPSers, but hopefully you guys can avoid that. So it was kind of a bummer to be able to get all the way there and then not be able to finish the boss, but we did learn a lot from doing it, and hopefully next time we can go ahead and try it out again and actually finish one. So hopefully this helped you guys out a little bit, so that when you guys go ahead and jump in one of these dungeons, you guys aren't super surprised. Let me know if anyone else has figured anything out about it and knows any more tips. If you guys liked the video, go ahead and subscribe and give me a thumbs up on the video. I'd really appreciate it. Again, if you guys had any suggestions or anything, leave them down in the comments so people can see them. And then I hope you guys have fun with the new content. I'll see you guys next time.